So I've planned a somewhat unconventional class for us today, at least unconventional according to my usual practices in this class or a class of this kind. And my friend Lester Jackson agreed to come along and have a conversation with me and with all of us about racism, and particularly racism in policing. Of course, we've touched on the issue of race in policing at various points already, but we're about to jump into the Atwater case, and then following Atwater, we're going to be jumping into Terry versus Ohio. And in Atwater, what you're seeing is that the police have access to traffic regulations that let them place people under arrest for traffic crimes, and they have pretty much complete discretion and authority to pick and choose who they want to stop, who they want to arrest, who they want to search, and so forth. And that's true as well in the Terry versus Ohio area, the stop and frisk. And in both of these areas, there is substantial empirical evidence that race plays a really powerful role in the policing decisions. The studies have been done for many, many years. And the casebook contains a number of pages of notes that describe the empirical data to you. And I guess I just want to be clear, it's just not controversial anymore that in fact racial profiling, the use of race as a factor in deciding who you're going to arrest and stop and so forth, folks on all sides of the aisle agree that this is going on. Of course, there may be a dispute over whether it's appropriate or not. That's another question that we need to talk about as well. Are there times when it's appropriate to take account of someone's race when deciding the level of suspicion you have? So in any event, the casebook notes cover that material. What they don't do is to give us a very good sense of the experiential piece of this, of the ways in which racism in policing affect the lives of different communities and of different people in different communities. And so that's one of the reasons why I thought it would be interesting for Lester Jackson and Anne Coughlin to have this conversation with you and to talk about what we've learned from each other, or mostly what I've learned from Lester. What I typically do at this point in the semester is to talk to you about the reading that I've done. You can go out on the internet, you can find lots of resources that describe for you what life is like for people of color, particularly Black Americans and their children. And I thought it would be interesting for us to try to have a conversation together. Lester and I are friends, and I've learned so much from him. He's been willing to put up with questions from me. He's been willing to take on this uncomfortable job that I've given him. And when I asked him would he come and talk to our class, I guess we spoke for about 2 hours. But I think you were on board, yeah, from the beginning. Yeah. So the other thing that I wanted to mention, of course, and let's just get this on the table, Lester and I have it on the table between us, this is really uncomfortable. It's really awkward. And it's particularly uncomfortable today. We saw what happened in Charlottesville in August, and those kinds of violent disagreements, emphatic if not violent disagreements, are playing themselves out all across the country. And we just thought it was really important to try to sit down with a larger group. Each of you is coming from a different place. We don't expect you to agree with any normative vision, but we do hope that we can have a conversation in which we listen to each other and talk about, what life is like in some communities as opposed to others. So just to go out in front, I'm Anne Coughlin. I have been a law professor for a really long time. I'm white, I'm 61, I'm a woman. I grew up in Vermont, which is a rural state. I think by the time I was a senior in high school, there was one African-American student in the city of Rutland. He wasn't in my high school, he was in the other high school, and so there was just absolutely no integration whatsoever because it was a completely white, homogeneous community. My earliest experiences with the police, I can't even recall. I have absolutely no recollection of being told anything by my parents about the police. They gave me various pieces of advice about how to keep myself safe. Like I wasn't supposed to, get in a car with strangers, or I wasn't supposed to do drugs or something along those lines. But I have absolutely no recollection of them ever talking to me about my relationship with police. And so I sort of moved forward into my adult life into this area of scholarship and realizing that my own deeply embedded narratives influence the way I approach this work. And I've had to understand and try to learn from other people. So we're going to start talking now. And we want you all to chime in. We're not going to require that you chime in, but if you have questions, concerns, we'd love to hear what you have to say. So what about you when you were a child? What were your impressions of the police? Did you have an impression? Was there an experience that informed?
I think that, like most children, initially there is no negative, initially.
Yeah.
They're police officers, they're supposed to be they're the good guys. That's who you call when something is wrong. So I think out of the gate, initially, of course, like as a child, a small child, yeah, the police were great, initially. Emphasis on initially. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So did that change?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take long. I'll give you an experience. I grew up in a housing project. Some of you may know what that is. I hope all of you know what that is, because you'll probably be dealing with people who grew up that way as well. City-run housing project, not the greatest of areas. I'm a local, by the way. And there was an instant, I don't know how old I was. I was maybe, 12 or 13 or something like that. And there was a shootout. There was a huge shootout. It was like a drug-related shootout. Lots of, people getting shot everywhere. And I remember my mother calling the police all night long. Literally all night long. She would hang up, they would hang up, she would call back. They would hang up, she would call. All night long she called them, and the police never showed up. They never showed up from like 9 o'clock one night until the next morning. They showed up the next morning, and in that moment, like it's when you hear your mother pleading to the people who are supposed to protect everyone. That's their job. That's what they're sworn to do, to serve and protect. You hear your mother pleading for them to come to this area because their children that live here, I'm one of her children. And there's no response. There's no police cars. And this funny thing is we lived about 1/8 of a mile from the downtown police department. And they patrolled that neighborhood all the time, of course. But when we actually needed them. So that was my first experience. Like, that was a moment that I realized as a child that they don't care about us. You know what I mean? Like they literally don't police us the same. They don't care about us. Like people can say whatever they want to say. They can, get on TV and make statements when something happens or whatever. They're the first ones. But how do they treat you? How do they respond to you? That and at an early age, so that had a profound effect on me with my regards to how I view police. I had no problem, no issue up until that point. But when somebody shows you, like Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, you have to believe them. So when we needed them, when we actually needed them, it was a life or death thing. It was like, let them kill each other and we'll come scrape up what's left when in the morning. We walk out in the morning, there's blood all over everything outside, like the furniture we had and our lawns, blood all over it, people shot, all kinds of stuff. And they never showed. So, yeah, in the onset, police are good guys. That kind of changed in my mind a little bit from that point.
The first time the police came to my house was when my sister died of an overdose. So my experience of the police was quite different. It was terrifying and upsetting, but they were there in a sort of a community caretaking role, you know, to help my family in the aftermath of this very, very tragic event.
They were serving.
They were serving, yeah. So, you know, I can't remember a time in which my parents said to me, oh, the police are the good guys. It was just sort of an assumption that I grew up with. And then my earliest contact with them was in that role. And that's something that, again, I want to emphasize because the police do serve at least some communities some of the time, and maybe all communities some of the time. And they were incredibly helpful and empathetic in that space. You know, one of the most, you know, horrifying events for us. So when I read, you know, the Supreme Court cases or, you know, approach this doctrine, you know, it's sort of hardwired in me, these narratives about officers being good, serving. And I think that's an important part of the narrative. But so too is this very this important set of additional insights that your experience gives. So very, very different from mine. So did your mom ever give you what I'm going to call the talk? And I've told you what the talk is because that's the phrase that's used in social media and in newspapers. So when I teach this class without your help, what I typically do is to go online to, you know, a whole array of very respectable mainstream sources that describe African American parents and their decision at some point to pull their children aside and give them the talk. And there's probably more than one version of the talk. In fact, that's quite clear, and more than one piece of it. And of course, parents always give their children the talk about something. Maybe it's about sex or drugs or studying hard or something. But the African American parent version of the talk includes stuff about racism, and particularly includes stuff about how to protect yourself if you are in an encounter with the police. And that, again, was something that I found to be just so startling. It was not something that I ever needed to do with my children or my grandchildren.
Just sounds crazy.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. You have to protect yourself from the police. Did your mom or a mentor or, you know, did anyone have the talk with you?
Sure. I don't recall the exact time period, but naturally you have to. And once again, it's a shame that it's crazy that you would even need to prep your children before they deal with people who are there to protect them, as it were. But sure, absolutely. And it's also like I feel like we were having this discussion the other day, and I feel like a lot of those that the talk is innately ingrained in us now. Like you don't even have to really vocalize a lot of this stuff per se. It's like from the time that policing started with slave catchers on down, like we now innately know it's certain things and we have to move certain ways or not move certain ways and not wear certain things or things that, you know, are normal to everyday life because it could end ours.
So, do you mind if I share a couple details about your family?
No.
So Lester has a 4-year-old daughter, and his wife is expecting.
She doesn't know. I know what we're having. She doesn't know. It's next month. And I don't know when she'll see this video, so I don't want to say what we're having. Just because I know if we're looking at this thing tomorrow.
All right, just speaking hypothetically, if you were to have a son,
Okay.
you know, because the baby could be a son. It could
be.
be another daughter, but
Could
it,
be.
but it could be a son.
50-50 chance.
50-50 chance, right? So you didn't, at the baby shower, you didn't do the gender reveal?
She didn't want to do it this time. Yeah, everybody was begging. We just had the baby shower last Saturday. Everyone was begging, and she just doesn't want to know. I don't get it, but it's her right, so I'm not going to infringe on it. But I know, I had to know. I had to prepare myself mentally for what I'm going to be dealing with for the rest of my life at least. So I had to know.
Right, okay. Wives, yeah. Okay, so when do you have the talk with them? Do you need to do it before a racist incident occurs, or do you wait until after in order to leave them in that bubble where they still think they're living in a world where racism isn't the problem it is?
You know, this is the problem that I have, and I'm trying. I don't want to get emotional. One moment, because I don't want to have any talk with my kids. Like, we shouldn't have to have a talk, the talk, with our children. You know what I mean? Like, life should be, you know, I feel like if I have this talk, she's only 4. If I have this talk with her now, I feel like I'm robbing her of her innocence. She doesn't know anything about this stuff. Like, she's in a school with a full range of kids, like, you know what I mean? And everything is good, like, everything is good. You know, all of the black kids, the white kids, everything is good. And so I feel like having this talk with her, I don't know when to have it. I have no idea when to have it. I don't want to have it. I want to avoid it for as long as possible, but I don't want to. There is a point where life will show her, at some point life will show her that she's not viewed the same. And I don't want to not prepare her for that at the same time. You know what I mean? So I'm caught in this rock and a hard place. Like, every parent wants to prepare their child for everything. But how do I rob my daughter of her innocence, like her perfect world as it is now? I don't want to be the one to take that from her. And I feel like that talk takes innocence away from. Now I'm looking at things differently. You can't unhear something. You can't unexperience something. And both of them are going to happen at some point with my children. Am I the person that brings that to my kid? Now I feel like I have to for their survival, but I don't want to do that. So at this point, I don't know. I'm sorry for getting emotional too. Like, that's not even like, that's not normal. My wife can attest to that too. But it's crazy. Like, you know, we're talking about lives. Like, so and I want my child to live forever. I want my children to live forever. But I feel like at some point I'm going to have to rob them of what is innocent and pure to them at this point by having this very uncomfortable conversation. The questions, my daughter's extremely inquisitive. Like, everybody says that their children are like bright, and that my daughter's bright. like she says, she corrects me at 4. And you know, I'll give you an example. The other day I was off and I was driving her to school, and I told her, I was like, you know, you have a good day at school. And just remember to be kind to people. Remember to be kind to people, even if they aren't kind to you. And she said from the back seat in her car seat, if they're not kind to me, Daddy, I'll just leave and go play with someone who is. Now that's to me, that's heavy. Because I try to teach my daughter to, at this point, even early, to know her worth. And don't expect anything or accept anything other than what you're worth. But at that moment, I was telling her to, you know, even if people aren't treating you well, just deal with it. Like, just, you know, just still be kind. And she taught me something. So, like, you know, when people say that, my daughter's bright. My daughter's bright, and she's done this type of thing to me on several occasions. So, like, out of the mouth of babes, man, you can learn, like, it's crazy. And so all of that, you know what I mean? I wanted to have that. I wanted to own that, and I don't want to be the one to like start dismantling that stuff with these type of issues. But the world will do it if I don't, and she'll be a victim of it, and she won't be prepared for it. So that's the uncomfortable like truth that like every black person has to deal with. It doesn't matter what your lot in life is, whether you're rich or poor, whatever. Like it doesn't matter when it comes to some of this stuff. Like your money won't protect you in these in this type of situation. So I got to prepare somehow. It's uncomfortable though.
If you do have a son, do you think that your conversation with him will be different from the conversation with your daughter?
Yes. Yes.
How so?
Like I said, I don't know what these conversations would even look like, but I know as a black man, I can't speak from a black woman's perspective. I wouldn't even try to. I don't have that right. My wife can handle that portion of it. But there's certain, black men are in a lot of ways perceived as a threat regardless. Like the big black man narrative goes back to, where doesn't it go back to? You know what I mean? So the scary big black dude, even if you're not a big black dude, you know what I mean? Like that narrative is crazy, and it's like in the back of minds regardless. So the talk I have with my son would definitely be different from the talk that I have with my daughter, because my daughter hopefully won't be viewed as a big black man, but my son, even if he's not, will be. So it's but I don't know how those conversations will look. But one thing's for sure, they'll be uncomfortable, and but they're necessary.
So I want to press you just a little bit. Of course, you don't know how they'll look, and you can just tell me you don't want to think about it right now, if that's where you come out. But will you give your son specific advice about how to manage a police stop? You tell him, here's my best advice about what you should do to get through that moment?
I will, but I'm a bit of a I don't know what the word is. I'm trying not to paint myself too crazy. I just, I resist stuff. I'm a fighter, and I want my child to have that, because I feel like that's imperative to everything in life that they're gonna face. But I also know that a lot of pain comes with that. Like my mouth and my actions have gotten me in trouble with across the spectrum of things. But I don't care. But my child is different. You know what I mean? I want them to have that fortitude, but I don't want them to die because of it. I'm a little different with regards to myself. Like I'm a little more reckless when it comes to things, but I can't help it. As I resist, you know what I mean? Because if something's not right, it doesn't matter if it's black, white, related, whatever, like foolishness and injustice and stuff, I resist it, in a conversation, in a whatever. It doesn't matter if we're on Facebook or I'm talking to you. If it doesn't make sense, if it's not just, I'm not with it. And I want my kids to have that, but I recognize the danger of that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I will do my best to make sure that I prepare my son or daughter to be able to. I mean, I hate even mentioning, because they say like survive the encounter. That's ridiculous. Why is it even an encounter? You pull me over for a taillight out. That's not an encounter. You know what I mean? That's you pulling me over for a taillight out. That's an encounter. Like you encounter like that's a whole like something totally different. Why are we having encounters with police of something simple? Like, so the whole narrative is messed up. But so I hate to even say that I want to teach my son or daughter how to survive an encounter, because we shouldn't even be looking at it, policing like that. You know what I'm saying? But I'm gonna do my best to do just that.
Well, maybe we'll talk about that when the time comes.
Yes, I will need lots of advice.
Yeah, because as you know, because we've discussed it, your son and or daughter driving with a broken taillight could be placed under arrest. That's the point of Atwater, you all, right? And the police officer has the discretion to decide whether he's going to just give a ticket or whether he's going to, for the broken tail light, or escalate it into a much more significant encounter. That is the full-blown custodial arrest. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah.
We have much to talk about.
We have much to talk about. Yep. Yep. So, what about you? Have you been pulled by the police for reasons that struck you as being
Odd?
Yeah, odd. Good. Odd. Yeah, odd.
Yeah. Yes. I'll just give one example. I think it was back in 2000. It was back in 2011. I just bought the car, and it was a 2011, and it was great, looking good. The sunroof's back, man. The music's playing. I'm in what we call a wife beater. It's you know what a wife beater is. And I'm coming to pick my wife up, who works here at UVA. And I'm driving down past Graffiti Bridge. You know what Graffiti Bridge is, of course. And the UVA cop pulls me over, and he asked me for my license and registration, so I give it to him, of course. I asked, why'd you pull me over? He didn't answer. He said, I'll come back. Took my stuff and went back to his vehicle. You know how they take forever to come back with their stuff. I'm picking my wife up. Now I'm late. I'm trying to, I want to text her, but I don't want to reach over there and, all kinds of stuff. So he comes back with my license and registration and hands it back to me, and I asked him again, so why did you pull me over? And he says, everything checked out, you're good to go. And I'm like, okay. So I look at the registration that I gave him, and the registration that I gave him was for a car that my wife previously owned that we had wrecked, totaled, crashed. It wasn't even a registration for this car at all, and my name was not on it. It had nothing to do with me at all. Like, my name wasn't on the registration. For some reason, it was in this car. I reached in and gave him the wrong one. So in my mind, but by this time, I think he had pulled off, or I pulled off or something, but I'm thinking, what did you go back there and check that checked out all right? Because if you had really looked at this registration, you would have not seen my name. My wife's name is Shirley Datu. She's Ghanaian. I'm Lester Jackson. You feel what I'm saying? There's no way that you can confuse anything. There's no Jackson on that. She had that car before she met me. You see what I'm saying? So what was he checking? Why did he pull me over? You know what I mean? What checked out okay? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I wasn't speeding. I was a young black dude in a very nice car with the windows down, playing MOP or something like that. Annie Up, I think it was, because, it was on. It was the summer. It was on. You know what I'm saying? And I was off that day, and I was like, let me go pick my wife up. She doesn't have to drive herself to, I'm going to get my wife. And this dude pulls me over and says everything checks out, and I didn't even have the right registration. So I don't know what he went back there and looked at, but I got a good idea why he pulled me over. You know what I mean? And it wasn't for any law that I broke. It was because I was a young black guy in a nice car that he probably felt I shouldn't have been riding around in, with the wife beater on, with the music playing and the sunroof back. You know what I mean? So it's just things like that, like, and as you said to me, like, police can pull you over for whatever reason. If you dip onto the line in the middle or something, they don't need any reason. They just pull you over and make something up. But this guy didn't even he didn't even make anything up. Like, he didn't even give me the dignity of make something up. Like, you know what I mean? I got you because, you were going to something. Everything checked out. Got in his car and left. I look at the registration like, what? Oh, this dude. But what can you do, man? Like, it's just one of those things where, and I'm not gonna give, many experiences or things like that, but that one, to me, struck me as like crazy odd. Like, if he had really done his job back there, then he would have seen, like, this, sir, what's the deal with this car? Like, this is not even where's the registration for this car? None of that. Everything checked out. It was clear what he was, why he pulled me over at least.
So I have a sort of a parallel crazy odd experience, not of my own, but of my brother. When he was in college, he took it into his head to earn extra money by selling drugs. And so he was driving back from somewhere, We were both students at Tufts. And so he was driving back from somewhere to Tufts with a large quantity of marijuana in the trunk of his car. He got pulled over for some kind of traffic violation. Cops open the trunk, find the marijuana. Absolutely no consequence to my brother. They took the pot, you're free to leave. And my brother, again, it's like, skin of your teeth, right? And the joke among all of us was the cops probably smoked it. They probably didn't turn it in as they were supposed to. But that was just sort of a parallel example of when we're in conversation about our experiences with the police. My experiences have been one of service and then one of leniency. Kids will be kids. College students in that era, everybody's running around with pot, just let them go. But of course, my brother, as you can imagine, is white, looks like me.
And then you say something about that time period where there was some sort of law
the Rockefeller drug laws were going into effect, and they were incredibly punitive. And so they were the beginnings of what we now think of as sort of the 3 strikes and you're out war on drugs. And so people would be incarcerated for decades for what my brother possessed. I'm not sure that he was in New York, and I didn't want to call him up and say, remember that time? Obviously he went on, he got a PhD, he's now a psychologist, he's married, he has children, it's all good. I didn't want to remind him of his wicked childhood and find out, were you in New York, you idiot, But that's, again, just another, sort of memory of mine that informs my approach to these narratives and my expectations of what police might do, that they might exercise their discretion in a way that could actually be lenient.
Right.
And
so it is possible for that to happen. So my whole thing is, what do you think would have happened were I to be pulled over at that time period with those laws with a trunk full of weed in the car? It would have changed completely the trajectory of everything. My family. There'd be no PhD. There'd be no wife with a PhD. There'd be none of the things that your brother was able to. I'd probably maybe just getting ready to get out of prison. And people don't understand that when you get locked up for this long for these type of things or for anything, they overcharge black people for everything. Doesn't matter what it is. But you are put into a time capsule. So you come out. If you got locked up in 78 and it's 2000 and whatever, you're still in 78. Like, you put in a time capsule, you didn't learn a trade, you didn't learn anything, but probably how to be a better criminal in prison. So and then you bring people out and they can't get a decent job, they can't start their life, but they've already paid for that crime. It's like you pay twice. So those type of things, like the difference in policing, people don't really understand the way that it completely disrupts family life and family structure. So it's possible for that lenient type of stuff to happen. Why doesn't that happen more so with black people? You know what I mean? And why are we oftentimes targeted by police, even if we don't have a trunk full of weed? Like, there's some, this probably, I know he has something in the trunk. Like the whole psyche of things. Like, why do you need to get in my trunk? There's a spare tire back there, dude. What do you want? And maybe a soda can. You know what I'm saying? So it's just it's completely unfair. But when you complain about it or you voice your opinion about it, we often, you've heard, we're the angry black people, the angry black man, the angry black woman. But there's a life of being mishandled, misused, seeing family members mishandled, misused, and abused that is attributed to what you think is just an angry black person in this one conversation or this one interaction. There's a life there's decades of weight and hurt, and that stuff hurts. I mean, it's not just anger, it hurts. If you have a open sore on your arm and I grab it, your reaction is gonna be it's not gonna be oh my, why did you? No, when you hurt, you usually lash out in some kind of way. So people have to empathize a little bit more when you have a conversation with a person of color and they are up here and you walk into the conversation here. You got to realize you're dealing with people who've already dealt with stuff that you probably never have had to even think about. And so when we walk into those conversations, we're not walking into them equally. You know what I'm saying? That's just not the case. So empathize a little bit. You know what I mean? We don't know what that drive was like. Getting there. I can't even wear. Well, I do, because like I said, I resist. I do what I want to do. It's probably gonna get me killed one day, but, and I feel like I'm neglecting the people over here. I'm sorry. Certain things it's not smart to wear certain things. You know what I mean? It's not smart to do or go certain places at a certain hour, but it's not wrong to do it. You know what I mean? So like, if I could get everybody to like close your eyes real quick, like everybody real quick, just close your eyes. I want to demonstrate something. Keep them closed. No peeking. No peeking. This won't take long. Give me about 30 seconds. No peeking. No peeking. We're still not peeking, right? All right, open your eyes. Like me walking around like this. You see what I'm saying?
You're a scary black man.
Yeah, you see?
Yeah.
But I'm still the dude that was sitting here with these fantastic shoes on, by the way. And a bow tie.
And a bow tie.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So why does this change?
Yeah.
And I know you had to feel something when you open your eyes. It's impossible to not have. It's impossible to not have. Why does this change anything? What if it's cold outside and it's sunny? I have to be cold and blind. It's cold outside. I have a hoodie on. Maybe it's raining. But this could get me killed. I am now the scary black dude. You see what I'm saying? But I'm still the same person that was talking 30 seconds ago that looked relatively, I guess you would call it, normal. You know what I mean? But this is normal too. There's nothing abnormal about this.
So something that I don't like, you didn't make a big point about it, but when you were just sitting there, you told us to open your eyes, your hands were also in your pocket.
Yeah, and I did that on purpose.
And that's the thing that like stuck out to me, and I was like, what's he gonna do? It's like that.
I did it on purpose.
Outfit that you can't, you just walk around. Excuse me, sir. Yeah. And insert whoever officer. Excuse me, sir. Yeah. And it's like blah blah blah. Let me see your, it's like you don't.
And there you go. Now you have the encounter.
Literally nothing's in my hands. Like they're just.
It's cold outside. My hands get cold too. I'm actually now because it's cold in here. My hands get
It
cold.
is cold in here.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So those type of things, like, and I appreciate you pointing that out because I did that on purpose. So this whole, and can you still hear me? I know I covered the mic up. Did I mess that up? Okay. Those are the narratives and those are the things that we need to try to change because what I wear does not dictate who I am. You know what I mean? It's cold and I want to be warm. Or I just want to have because I like hoodies. You know what I mean? That shouldn't make you now look at me differently, which would make you treat me differently. You know what I mean? It's unfair, and it's void of like human compassion and empathy. Like, what does this have to do with anything? Anything?
Will you tell your son not to wear a hoodie?
No. If it's cold, if I'm having a son, yeah, wear a hoodie. Why not? Daddy's gonna be in a hoodie. I'll tell my daughter the same thing. If it's cold, put it on. Because at some point, and I think it's like a generational thing, like we're gonna have to start telling our children, white and black, white parents need to have this talk with their children. It shouldn't just be a black parents having this talk thing. Like I feel like that's how you start some of this change. Like white parents need to talk to their white kids, like, and allow them to understand and listen to them, but teach them that the world isn't the same for everybody. It really isn't. We want it to be, and we're unfortunately passing you a world that is not that way. But this is the beginning of trying to create it. Like, I think a lot of the times, like, I think when we had in our conversation, you know, you go through life thinking that everything is cool and everything is okay for everyone. Oh, we just had a black president. We're just post-racial. It's not. And if, you can look now, you know we're not. And so, you know, when you then you get older and you realize this. But the problem now is that you're an older white lady now, and now you realize and you're teaching it. But the people, it's like the reset button is hit every time a kid is born, and this is not had. Like, it takes your lifetime for you to realize this. Like, we're talking about this stuff at 4 and 5 and 6, not wanting to. You're realizing it as an adult, and that information isn't passed. You teach it now to other adults, but I think it's important that we teach it to younger white kids, and so they can start that over and over and over. So now they know. And so now when it's just like when you hear something, you can't unhear it. You teach the white kids the same thing. So when they hear it and they see stuff now they can identify. Okay, well, you know what, they were right. Mom was right. Dad was right. Like, this is crazy. This is unfair. So now you have these, like now you have these kids who are out there like walking out of class because they're not with that foolishness. Like, that's important. So like, the younger that these things happen, I think that's when you actually start seeing change, because growing old and then dying with that information does no one any good. You know what I mean? Like, you got to start young. Teach your kids that it's not equal for everybody. Not yet. We want it. That's the world that we want to give you, but we can't give it to you yet. Maybe you'll be able to give it to your kids, but we got to teach them early, not just black kids, but white kids too.
So,
Should I take this off? Should I leave this on? I think I'm gonna leave it on. I almost put it back up with my glasses on.
It's cold.
It's cold in here. I'm gonna leave it on.
Cold in here. Over the past few years, there's been numerous shootings by police of unarmed African American men, often in the traffic stop encounter. Have you watched the videotapes of those shootings, and if so, can you share your reactions when you see them?
I watched them initially. I watched when, because this stuff, we've been complaining about this stuff in the black community forever. It's only now that we're in the age of everybody having technology at their hands that we're all exposed to it at the same time. Like, somebody gets killed over here today, you hear about it and see it over here today. It's not like word of mouth. It's not a newspaper. So yeah, I initially looked at like all of them, like most people probably did. And my initial emotive response, of course, was like anger. You know what I mean? How can you not be angry? Like, a dude gets pulled over for his taillight out and he gets shot in his back like all of these times and he's running away. It's not a threat. And you shoot him in his back. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, you're shooting somebody in their back as they're running away, and you know that you pulled them over for a taillight being out. Like, at one point, if you're too afraid to do your job, I guess you need to get another job. You know what I mean? But so yeah, I watched them, but after a while, it just became like it was almost it was too much. I can't even really look at these videos anymore because it's like communal pain. Like, I feel like I'm watching one of my brothers or my uncle or somebody get killed. I don't know these dudes, but I know these dudes. You know what I mean? It's like a communal pain. I can't even explain it. Black culture and African culture is communal. You know what I mean? That's why all of those sayings, it takes a village to raise a child. All of these things, we're communal people, And so indirectly, I feel related to this guy getting choked out because he had loose cigarettes that he was selling. Like, that could have been my uncle, you know what I mean? It felt like my uncle. He's screaming, I can't breathe, and you still choking him to death. Like, I felt the pain. Like, so I can't even watch those things anymore. The pain is felt, and it's like a family member is being killed and I'm watching them die. So no, not anymore. I'll see the clip of it And if there's something to read below it, I'll read it, but I can't watch the videos. Like that stuff hurts too much I can't look at that stuff. Not anymore.
So we're told repeatedly that it's suspicious to run away from the police, and in fact, there's a Supreme Court case, United States Supreme Court case on point that treats flight from police officers as being suspicious and adding to the officer's authority over the suspect. It has long seemed to me that that assertion that flight is suspicious is not taking account of the points of view of communities of color. What is your thought about running from cops?
I'll tell you what my thought from running from cops is. Policing started as slave catchers. So black people have always been running from cops. We were trying to run to freedom, and the slave catchers were chasing us to bring us back into slavery. Black people have always ran from cops. So it may be suspicious to someone else, but it's not suspicious to me. I want to live. And it's been proven throughout history that my life is in danger. So if running is not suspicious to me. It can be viewed as suspicious, but to me, not with all the evidence and all the cases and all the real life experiences from these encounters that we've had to deal with police. We should have, there should be a caveat there, that if a black person runs from a cop, that's not grounds to shoot, that's not grounds to do anything. You get them another day. That's not suspicious. We're trying to live. My taillight was out. I don't want to die. I was selling a loose cigarette. I don't want to die. I'm trying to run. That big dude, he couldn't have ran. He didn't have a shot. But it's just like, everything is suspicious when you're black. My skin makes me suspicious. So that's why I got pulled over. I'm going to pick up my wife. You know what I mean? Suspicion is in the eye of the beholder. And if you're looking through that lens, I'm always suspicious. You know what I mean? So no, it's not suspicious to me, but it's suspicious to him. And unfortunately, he has the power of life and death in his hands.
Another question about those cases. The vast majority of them, I should have double-checked to see the status of the recent ones and outcomes. But either the officers aren't charged, or if they are tried, they're acquitted. And I just wondered what your reaction is when you hear that news. Are you surprised? Is there a case that you think this is going to be the case where the officer will be convicted this time and then they're not? Does it matter?
Oh, it matters. It definitely matters. And I think that every case, I feel like, oh, this is the one. Yeah. Oh, it's impossible for this not to be the one. Every case, I feel like that. I'm not shocked. No, I'm not shocked. I wish I was shocked, because if I was shocked, that would mean that the opposite happens most of the time. But I'm not shocked. But it hurts. It hurts because it's so in your face, and people make so many excuses, like, oh, well, what was he doing? It doesn't matter what he was doing. It is not the job of a police officer to be judge, jury, and executioner right there on the street for whatever it is. Unless I'm pointing a gun directly at you, why are you trying to kill me? Okay, fear for your life now. That's a legitimate fear. But me running away is not fearing for your life. That's you becoming judge, jury, and executioner. And that's wrong, and it hurts. Like, I wish that I could say, yeah, man, like, whew, I have a lot of hope that they're gonna lock this dude up, because clearly the evidence shows that he went way beyond what he was supposed to be doing. But now I'm not surprised. Like, they overcharge police officers. They, instead of charging them with something that they know they could get them for, they charging them with some crazy, like the highest. You're never gonna get this dude for murdered one, because he pulled him over for some reason anyway. So it wasn't like he walked out the house. You can't prove that he walked out the house thinking, oh, I'm gonna go kill me a black person today. You can't prove that. But so when you try to charge people with crimes that you almost have to prove that, of course he's gonna walk. You know what I mean? So it's all part of the broken system.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting, subtle, and important point about the substantive law and the role of prosecutors and communities in these cases, because you can understand that in some of the cases the prosecutor does want to maybe make a strong statement, and then, as you all know, prosecutors always overcharged. I mean, that's just their MO. To get people, and I strike that. They don't always overcharge. Frequently, they overcharge in order to get people to plea bargain and so forth. But it struck me in the Trayvon Martin case, for example, that was a prosecution where if perhaps the case had gone to the jury on a manslaughter charge, it might have been possible to win a conviction. And of course, that's so incredibly difficult to explain to young people, particularly young African American people. I spoke on a panel at UVA to the African American fraternity. And of course, the students were just devastated, shocked by the acquittal. I was not, and I was trying to explain to them, well, it's because I think there was an overcharging. You know, this was not a murder one case,
Right.
Or not an easy murder one case. And so I think that's right. At the same time, you know, there is this pent-up feeling in the community that you want the most serious charge. You want to get them. Yeah.
That has to be.
Yeah.
I felt like a lot of the cases we read from, they would go for the highest one, but then also have other charges below.
Correct.
Is that not happening?
I don't. Yeah. In that case, I don't think it did happen, and that's something that that decision takes place by negotiations with the parties and the judge. And so you can imagine a defendant thinking, I'm going to just go for, I'm going to say murder one or nothing because I'm assuming the jury's going to go for nothing. And that's a very risky strategy for defendants to take. Typically you want the whole menu of charges, but in these cases you can see the politics are such that that's why they might make that judgment. Sam, was your hand up? No. Grace.
Obviously, and like indicated that these conversations are sort of like a way to potentially change the narrative
Yeah.
that is so broken.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm wondering how you avoid feeling like you're being put in this role of like explaining racism or like, you know, just that kind of like uncomfortable, like speak for an entire community type of feeling, and if that's like an issue for you ever.
No, I think that no one can speak for an entire community. I can't speak for the entire black community. I can speak to my experience and what I've seen in the community that I've lived in. And you know, but the thing of it is that it is an uncomfortable conversation. But so what? You know what I mean? You have to have uncomfortable conversations all the time. If your grades are suffering, you got to go have an uncomfortable conversation with your professor. You know what I mean? Like uncomfortable conversations I had daily. I got to break up with this girl. You got to break up with this dude. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but you got to do it. You know what I mean? Because it's just something that has to be had. So I feel like this particular uncomfortable conversation is often neglected because people don't want to feel like they're a part of the problem. But I think when you don't have that conversation, you become part of the problem. You know what I mean? So if we are to usher in this beautiful world that we want to have, like everybody needs to be having these uncomfortable conversations amongst yourselves, amongst your children. Have it with your old grandparent who you know doesn't feel the way that we want people to feel right now. But it needs to happen. You know what I mean?
So my question is, a lot of what we've been talking about today has been, you know, obviously using the common black-white narrative,
Yeah.
black cop, black
Sure.
person. But a common belief in the black community is that if we had more black police officers, probably this wouldn't happen. My question for you is, are you a part of that belief that if there were more black cops doing these pulling people over, that we wouldn't be pulled over as much, or like that these shootings of unarmed black men wouldn't happen as much if there were more people on the other side who did look like us?
I think that sounds good, but I'm not one of those people that believes that. I'm of the belief that police protect themselves. And if there is a situation where a police is going to be prosecuted, you look at that stuff going on in Baltimore where they're planting guns on people and, you know, all that stuff like that. The ones who are getting prosecuted, most of them are black. Like, so police generally protect themselves, but I feel like, no, I don't think that because black people have horrible experiences from black police officers too. You know what I mean? It's a I don't want to say it's a club, but it's a club. It's a fraternity, as it were. And I don't think that, and we were having this discussion, like, I don't want to say that, you know, all police are bad, because that's kind of crazy. But I say crazy things sometimes. But if I think that you have lots of police officers, both black and white, that go into policing with this idea that they want to be the change and that they can change something. But I feel like once they get there and realize that they're going into something that's a lot bigger than they are and a lot more established than they are, you either go with the tide, which makes you implicit, or you get pushed out, ostracized, and you're the guy that takes the downfall. So that you know, the whole idea that if there were a bunch more, it would take almost all of them. You know what I mean? And that's not going to happen. You know, I think the FBI said that you know, a long time ago, that the Klan left and then they became police officers. You know, the FBI said that. So it's no surprise that, now that's not every police officer is a racist or a part of, you know, but that's just, you know, we got to look at the structure of this stuff. This stuff isn't happening by accident. You know what I mean? People aren't being policed differently by accident. And it's so many, and that's like the way that it began and the way that it's still structured, that it's hard for a police officer, black or white, to just be a good police. Like, you know a bad police officer if you're a good one. But if you're not telling on that bad one, does that make you a bad one? You see what I'm saying? And when you tell on the bad one, what happens to you? That's what I'm saying. So, no, I don't think that it will help, man, because it would take such an overwhelming group of people to make that change, and that won't happen, in my opinion. Unfortunately.
Are there any more questions? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so just sort of building on that, back when the Department of Justice seemed to have a strong interest in people's civil rights and were going after police departments, most of the results of that were structural changes, training, you know, more training, and it seems like you're saying that will never be enough. I mean, what is there anything that's enough other than kids who never learned to fear someone that looks like you in a hoodie and sunglasses becoming cops and pushing out the older generation? I mean, what is it legal consequences for police who shoot unarmed black men?
I would love to see legal consequences for police officers. That's true, but we just mentioned that doesn't often happen. But so I feel like you can go through all the training that you want to go through. If mind is what it is, I can pass a test and not believe what I just passed. We do it all the time with all kinds of stuff. I don't have to believe everything but I can pass this test. So the training isn't enough. Like, that's why you have to start early and help form the minds of these kids, because they can be the new police officers. And if you have this whole group, that's that overwhelming group that I'm talking about. Like, will that happen? I don't know, man. I don't know, because you have to have enough people on board willing to have that uncomfortable conversation. You know what I mean? You have to be willing to do it. I think it starts with the children, all of the children, black, white, every child, Indian, whatever you are. It starts young, and you have to help them understand. But because, I mean, you know, we get older, we get set in our ways, and our mind is made up. Y'all are passing tests in cases that you don't probably know, but you can pass the test. You see what I'm saying? So, nah, man, I don't think that training and all of that stuff, if they penalize them, great. Maybe that would thwart a little bit of it, but it's structural, man. You know, if you build this building and the structure is messed up, it doesn't matter if the penthouse is beautiful. The structure's messed up, and this thing will eventually fall. It's gonna, you know what I'm saying? The structure of it is messed up.
First of all, congratulations to you and your wife on.
Man, thank you. I appreciate that.
My wife and I have two little ones at home.
That's amazing.
And I didn't know the depth of the love until
Man,
we had kids.
it's nothing like it.
Aching kind of love. And like you, I want to be a good dad to my kids. I want to carry the right message to them. My dad marched with Martin Luther King, and what he taught us was that there's only one race, and that's the human race.
That's right.
But I'm struggling to have that same conversation with my son now. And we don't have this conversation yet, but playing it out in my head is too little now.
Yeah, you don't want to take that innocence away.
Right.
I get it.
But here's the thing, I don't know, after, especially after Charlottesville,
Yeah.
clearly we're not post-racism.
No.
And that's just one small example. So I want to be able to have an honest conversation with him about race, not only race, but differences, whether that's sexuality or
That's
religion
right.
or what have you.
That's right.
And so I guess I'm interested in your viewpoint about as a father in my position. Do I talk to him the same way that my dad did, or do I have a really more frank conversation about, look, we are different, but we're not better or worse? I don't know exactly how to have that conversation. I guess I'm asking for your thoughts.
I think it needs to be what you said second. The conversation your dad had with you about what he did was for that time period. The conversation you need to have with your children is for this time period. Now, we like to think that we're post-racial, but the people who are marching all over the place were not 60-year-olds. You know what I'm saying? You saw it. We saw it. I lived downtown. I drove through there, like 2 minutes after I drove through is when they ran through and killed her. You know what I mean? I saw the crowd coming over the hill, and they were young people. They were young people. You know what I mean? So the conversation that you need to have, that I need to have, that we all need to have when we have our children is one that is very frank. Because you got to think about it, man. Like, kids now are exposed to everything. Like, when we were growing up, like, I'm 34. But the internet didn't even really start until 1990. You know what I mean? Like, I remember the real floppy disks, like the big ones. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, my daughter has a tablet and this and that. Like, kids are, and she's 4. And she's had it since she was 2. So it's like, kids are like super connected. You know what I mean? So I think that we sometimes get the idea that we need to, like, and I struggle with it too, because I mentioned it earlier, but I think we get the idea where we need to, like, be more protective with their emotions, because my daughter corrects me, I mentioned it, more protective with their emotions and their understanding. Like, they understand a lot more than I think we give them credit for. You know what I mean? Because they're exposed to so much more. Like, the world is everywhere, and it's like right here. Like, we had to, like, wait for somebody to say something, you know what I mean? Or read it in a newspaper until the internet popped off in 1990, and it was like, oh.
We had to wait for letters.
Right, you know what I mean?
Imagine trying.
That's crazy.
You have a crush and you have to wait for a letter.
That's crazy. So my sister-in-law's in Barbados, and we text them back and forth like this. We're connected, and like, kids are connected, man, and exposed, and they see everything. If you think your kid doesn't see some stuff when you're not looking, they see everything. You know what I'm saying? So we gotta have frank conversations with our kids, man. They're very, very uncomfortable, and I don't want to have it. I don't want to have it, and I can see you don't want to have it, but we have to have it because it's important, man. I think it's one of the most important conversations that we'll ever have with any other human in our lives, because those ones we can help shape. You see what I'm saying? Like, I could talk all day. If you feel how you feel, you just feel how you feel. But our children look up to us. They emulate us. They want to be like daddy, or they want to be like me. So we have a measure of, I don't want to say control, but we have influence over them. So it's important, man. It's super important that we have those very, very, very frank, uncomfortable conversations with our kids. That's what I think. Hello. How you doing?
So, I don't know if it's a question, but it's more of a thought, because what I struggle with is the belief aspect. I feel as though, like, as people of color, as people of color, or especially as a woman, so, like, a double negative for me. It's like, you say, like, these things happen to me, right? And it's like, you can easily believe, like, oh, I was a woman, I went to the mechanics, and they tried to, like, overcharge me on, like, fluid. And you're like, oh, because that's happened. But then when you're like, oh, like, I had this encounter, and I'm sure it happened because I was black. And then your friends are like, yeah, I understand. But like, they don't believe you. And you're not trying to say, like, this is my plight and, like, feel bad for me. But you're like, this is real, and I need you to
acknowledge that.
And so I don't know, like, how we do it. We're not, like, throwing white guilt, like, feel bad, because that's not, like, what the point is. The point is to just, like, understand and empathize and to be an ally, and it shouldn't have to be, like, I was in a situation with a group of my friends, and they were all white, and I was the only person of color, and, like, somebody came up to me and pointed me and called me the N-word,
man.
police have anything.
Oh,
She
man.
doesn't really know what to do.
Right.
And so after they were like, we're really sorry, we didn't know what to do, we've never faced a situation. And but it was kind of like the, oh, now I believe you moment. And I'm
Right.
like, all this time, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Right.
how do you know what I mean? Because you just want to be believed. Like, we're not running around here saying these things for no reason.
You're not the angry black girl who always wants to make it about race or something like that.
Right.
Right.
And so, like, I don't know if your experience, like, if you found a way to try to find.
No, I haven't.
I
You know, it's a, I don't even want to cut you off, but the answer is no. I wish that I had an answer that was like, you know, this is what, but that answer to me, you have to start early so people can empathize earlier. If your parent tells you that this is the way it is, when they start seeing these things or you telling them these things, they can recollect back to, well, you know, they said that this type of stuff would happen. But see, when we go through life and we don't have these type of conversations and we don't really like experience them personally, it's not real to us. Like, and another thing is like, I don't have a problem. Like, so I heard you mention like, you don't want to just be throwing white guilt. I don't have a problem with white guilt. It is what it is. Like, I don't want you to own it like, oh, I did something and I want, but I want you to understand that this is the world that we live in, and if you are not helping in your situation, somebody walks up to you and call you N-word, you got all the white friends around you and no one says anything, they should feel guilty for that. And they did because they came and apologized. White guilt is fine. Sometimes you need to feel it because we need allies. And if you're not an ally, you're complicit to some stuff that's hurting me. That stuff hurts. Like, that hurt her. You know what I mean? So I don't think, you know, you said they said they didn't know what to do. Like, go through your mind the paces of things that you could have done. Like, if there was a situation, it's always with race though. Nobody knows what to do when it comes to race. But if somebody had said something about your mother or something, you know exactly what to do. You know exactly what to say. You know exactly how to respond to that. You know how to respond to racism. You know how to respond when your friend, who's the only black person at the table, and someone walks up and calls her the N-word. You know how to respond. Why don't you respond? That's and you know, so it's the empathy. Put yourself there. See what I'm saying? And if that was the case, then they should feel guilty because they came and apologized afterwards. Don't apologize after you saw me become a victim and you didn't do anything to help me. I need an ally in those moments. You see what I'm saying? Like, and that's the whole point of it. So it's like, teach your children to be allies early. They'll be allies forever. You know, so that one experience for them, okay, now I get it. They'll forget it. Now I'll get it again. And then the end age, and now they really get it. Yeah. But it took that long to get it. Start that stuff early. Get it early. So going up through life, it's like a puzzle. They're right, they're right, they're right, they're right, they're right, they're right. It's not always like, well, you know, but what did you do? Did you say something to anger? Or did you know, why would he call you that? I don't know why he would call me. Why would he call me that or her call me that? You know what I mean? Like, there's no reason for that. So you want to create this system, this system of like helping each other, man. Like, it's important. It's important, like, and do it early. Y'all are still young. I'm young relatively. My body doesn't feel young, but we're young and we're alive. Like, even if you're old, it's not like you're too old, but it's like, you know, you really need to start young. Like, the younger, the better. We train everybody to do everything as young as they can. If you want to be a ballerina, you got them in the little tutu thing spinning when they're 2. If they want to be a basketball player, they're out there with the little Fisher Price thing shooting in the, you know what I mean? When they're super young. Why don't we do this when they're super young?
I just wanted to go back a little bit to the nature of the eventual talk you might have to have with your kids. And,
Yeah.
Maybe steer you in the direction of school discipline. Because we know that if you have a son, he's infinitely more likely to be suspended in school at a really early age than if he was a different race.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't imagine a more nurturing position in society than a teacher. But we know that race extends all the way down there.
Yes, sir.
You know, how you as a parent might approach that.
I think it's a lot of parent-teacher talks. I have my daughter in private school. It's the The classes are a lot smaller. They seem to be extremely helpful. It's the first person I know in my family, on my side of the family. My wife, it's different circumstances, but first person in my side of the family that's ever gone to private school. I went to public school until the 5th grade, and then I was homeschooled, so my outlook on things is a little bit different. But I think those conversations need to be had, and I think smaller classrooms create those type of situations where you're talking more, because we all know, like you just made, and so that creates like the school to prison pipeline. Like you get pushed into like, oh, well, this is a bad kid, and that stuff, like we internalize that stuff at an early age. And if you keep getting told and everything shows you that you're the bad this and you're the bad that, like there was a study done, I can't remember what, I don't want to mess it up. It was called like stereotype threat or something like that, where you your achievements, like you go towards what those stereotypes are. So if we internalize that I'm this bad kid, I'm this whatever, it's dangerous, because our kids then can like subconsciously jeopardize themselves. And so with the schooling, man, like I think that the only thing is like you got to really be hands-on as a parent, and that's often very difficult. Like with the teaching aspect in the school, it's been difficult for a lot of black people, because man, we're out there working like crazy to try to provide like a better life. So you try to make all the parent-teacher things that you possibly can, but it's like we got to be super crazy hands-on to make sure that it doesn't happen to our children, because the stats definitely show that, man, when it's a person of color, black or whatever, it's very likely that they'll be suspended for something that someone in another color may not be, and that just creates this whole, beginning of some crazy stuff that we want to avoid. It's difficult, man. I don't even really have an answer for it, but I feel like very hands-on approach. Like you got to be in there. I try not to miss anything with any of my children. I haven't missed a sonogram, I haven't missed anything. Like if it's my child, I'm there. It doesn't matter if I got to take off, I'm there. Because I need them to see that I am there. You see what I'm saying? I need my children to see it, and I need whoever's dealing with my children to see it. So if I mistreat my children, there will be repercussions for mistreating my child. Like I'm not some absent father. I'm a father that will hold you responsible for the way that you treat my children. You know what I mean? So I think when people see that, that your level of involvement is a lot higher than what they may have expected, they kind of like, all right, well, okay. I can't just sweep this situation over. It's got to be legit, because I'm gonna call you the carpet. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. That's what I plan on doing. You know what I mean?
Thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
Grace, you anticipated one of my concerns in asking you to come. It's a burden to place on you to, share experiences and to sort of be a spokesperson for a certain set of experiences. And so it felt to me like a very difficult ask when I asked you to do it. It felt awkward and perhaps even unkind.
Oh, no,
But
I wouldn't say that.
I just thank you so much for coming, and the class knows how I feel about them as individuals. They are the hope of our future. We are a country that is governed by the rule of law. We do not expect people to have the same ideas about what good laws are or what good policies are. We're going to have a big range of ideas, including about policing. But it seems to me that we have to be prepared to have these conversations and really try to listen to people and to understand what their experiences have been, so that our own narratives about why we're adopting one law as opposed to another are as thoughtful as possible. And so you've really done, I think, a big favor to us here, certainly to me, I will say that. So thank you so much for coming.